Hi folks, this is Rose from In Rose's Garden, and yesterday I experimented a little bit and made a little button bracelet. It's cute, small, very lightweight, but I needed to use a lobster claw and oval jump rings to close this. And I've decided I don't really like that closure. I mean, it works, but I don't really like it. So what I think would work better is simply to use one of the buttons and make a button closure. So I'm going to try that today, and I'm going to take you along for the fun. So let's go down and I'll show you what I've got and how we're going to do this. So we've got an old baggie, some Loctite glue, C-Lon. This is a light grayish color. My tweezers. Some little beads I got from SoftFlex Company. And my packet of beads from Bracelet buttons. Now, because I'm using the button as a closure, I'm going to use one of these big buttons for the closure. And then we're going to just sort of use whatever buttons we want out of here. I'm thinking the larger ones, since this is going to be a slightly larger bracelet, I think. But we could intersperse it with some smaller ones if we choose to. Let's see what we've got all in here. So let's dump this before we cut our cord and such. And we'll start figuring out what we want to use for beads. Obviously, we can't use these. Well, we could use these. I used them in my smaller bracelet, but I don't choose to. And we can't use the ones that have no holes, like the embellishments. Those are pretty. And the mermaid bubbles. They're probably not truly mermaid bubbles, but I think they work great as a mermaid bubble. So we'll put those all back in here. This doesn't belong in here. It was from one of my other little ones mixes. It's the last one I had left of my Dress It Up mix there. So I put it in here so it would have a nice place to call home temporarily. So since we're using this big button like this, we're going to use we're not going to use that big one. I don't want that big of one. So maybe we will just intersperse some of these bigger ones with some smaller ones, so we have some variant size. And remember, your knots are going to add some space to your bracelet, so you want to have them have some space, have some room to work too with those. Now I probably don't need any more buttons than this, because we're going to have the knot on this end is going to be the button for the closure, and then of course on this end we're going to have the loop where you're going to feed your button through. So this is probably all the buttons we need. We will leave a few other ones out just in case we need them, but I don't think we will. And if we wanted to, we could even put in a few of these smaller buttons as well, just as a little bit of something to create some difference. I personally really like these little flower ones. So, and I'm all about symmetry, but I don't really think we need it for this bracelet. I think we're going to just feed them through however they want to be. So let's just leave a few more buttons out in case we need them. And but I don't think we will. And put the rest of them back in the box here. Okay, so we've more or less chosen what we want to use here. And if I want to, I could even intersperse some of these beads in here as another little, oh, look at that, isn't that cute kind of thing. So let's get our thread cut, and then we will get it prepped and get going with it. Okay, so we're going to cut some of the cord. Now I will tell you, I originally tried this with 2 feet and it was not enough. We only got about that far. So we need about probably 3 or 4 feet. So I'm going to cut 4 feet. And hopefully that'll give us plenty. If not, I'm not going to remake it again. It will just be a shorter bracelet. So now that we've got our cord cut, the next thing we want to do is to make needles on the end. And you're going, what are you talking about, needles on the end? I'm sure. So what we're going to do that is we need to harden the cord. So what we're going to do is we're going to pour some super glue onto this baggie. This is Loctite Super Glue. And then we're going to take the ends of our threads and we're going to put it right there in the Loctite, bend the baggie over and bring the cord through the glue. You might want to do that once or twice just to make sure you got some on there. And when you got one side done, carefully put this away somewhere where it's not going to get onto anything and do the other side. You may be saying, why are we doing both sides if we're going to just spin this through the buttons? Well, both sides are going to go through the buttons. One goes up through the top, one goes through the bottom, back and forth until they grab the whole button. So we're going to leave this here to dry for just a second. In the meantime, we're going to we have everything all set out how we want to, and we're going to, when we put this through, we're going to be putting the button this sideways like this and going through the 2 corners of the diamond rather than going up in the top or the bottom of the square, because if you go up at the top or at the bottom, you're not going to be in the middle. So we'll go sideways through the diamond like so. This one is going to be our first button. It's going to be the one that goes through the loops at the end. So let's let this sit for a few seconds and then we'll get back to and then we'll do this. Okay, so let's check our strings. That one feels pretty dry. And that one's feeling pretty dry, so we can throw our baggie away and we can start threading these through. Now, because this first one doesn't have to go, is the first one, we're just going to thread this through both sides of the diamond, and then we're going to pull our thread up even. Oop, come on, don't tie in a knot there. If you're not quite even, don't worry about it. That's the way it goes. So then once we've got this on here, we're going to wrap the thread around both our two middle fingers and bring it up. I wrapped that the opposite way than I like. Wrap it around like so. Bring it through here, the loop you've made with your fingers, and then do that again so that you're making a surgeon's knot. Now you can do just a single overhand if you want to. I just prefer the surgeon's knot. I think it holds better. So now once you've got this through, you take your tweezers, put them through the loop, grab the button, grab the two threads right as they come out of the button and hold them tight. And then pull these threads up and they'll go straight up to the tweezer, as you can see, and then just tighten it up. Now I don't have this one quite all the way up to the button, and that's fine because this is our end one and we don't want it to be too super tight. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to feed on one of these purple beads, and I'm doing that because I probably won't do it again until we get to the end, so that this bead will give the thread some room for this button to go through the buttonhole on the other side. So now that we've got that on, we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did with the button, and that is to wrap it around and make our surgeon's knot. Sorry for bumping the camera. So through the middle of the knot, grab the threads right where you want it to be tightened to, and then pull it down. There we go. Now we're going to start with our button row. So what we need to do is we determine more or less which one's on the top. They probably won't be too much on the top, to be truthful with you. But the top one then will go through this corner of the triangle, or diamond I should say. Pull up tight, and then the other one is going to come through that same hole, coming to the top. Now we're going to tighten these two up, twist it to the way we want it to be, because it's going to try and go the other direction, because let's face it, it's where it's at. We tighten these two up. You can see that twisted some. We don't want that twisted. Bring her back over here. Now we're going back over through the other side of the diamond, with the top one going down and the bottom one coming up. Now we just tighten that like that. Now it's time for our knot again. So we're just going to knot this right here. Put our tweezer through and grab those two threads over on this side, right beside the button, and then pull our knot down. There we go with our first button in place. See how that looks? And now we just go down the line with all the rest of them, doing exactly the same thing. So the next button, like I say, determined which is closer to the top of our knots. Go through the first one. Bring the other one up through this same hole. Now we're going to head to the opposite side of the diamond shape, making sure you got the right one here. So these are in two different holes. Do you see that error? One came up the other hole. So we need to pull this one out and put it through the proper hole. There we go. Tighten that up. Go to the other side of our diamond. Which will be right here. Go through that. Bring this one up through that same hole. And then tighten our strings up. Cute. Okay, now then we just tie our knot just like we have been. 1, 2, grab the cord with the tweezers right at the button. See how I've got that right at the button? And then pull our cord and tighten it up. Now if you wanted to add some of the other little beads, now would probably be the time to do it. You could put one on here and then put more bead buttons on afterwards. Let's see what that looks like, shall we? So if we put one of these beads on here, there it goes. And here's what it would look like with the bead in the middle. I'm not sure I like that. I think I may just, well, it's not bad. It's not bad. Maybe we'll put a couple of these purple beads through here. We'll leave this one here and we'll put another one out down further down. So let's get the knot tied here. So just tie just like you have been. The only difference being that instead of grabbing through to a button, you're grabbing through to this bead right here. See? Now we'll tighten this up to this, and our bead is right there in place. Now we go back to doing the buttons just like we have been. But we're just going to have another little extra bit of design in there with having that darker purple bead. So let's get the next few beads on. Down through the bottom of this one. And then up through the top of the same hole. Tighten this baby up, and then we will put our strings through the next set of holes. And then we'll tighten this button up and tie its knot. And here we are so far. So let's get this knot tied. get the tweezer in around the button and pull. Now for the next button. Now this one is a 2-hole button, so much easier. You don't have to worry about going in the wrong hole. It's going to go to pretty much the proper one. Drop the cord through the top and through the bottom. And then our knot. There's our bracelet so far. Let's get this knot in, and then we'll decide if we're about halfway, if we want to put in another purple bead or if we want to just keep going with the buttons. For another few buttons before we put in the next purple bead. We'll have to decide that. Through the knot with the tweezers and then grab the cord right at the button. And then pull the strings tight. And pull your tweezers out. So now it's time to make that decision. Do we put the bead in again and then keep going this direction like so? Let's see how big it's getting to be. Now, we've gone all the way across the top, but not enough that we're halfway quite yet, but I think we will be with the next button. So, again, that question, do we put on the new next bead or go on? I'm thinking maybe we'll put on the next bead, because that will put 2 beads across the top, sort of, and then it keeps going down. So let's put on the next bead so that we can continue our design the way we've got it going. Okay, we got that bead pulled up to this next bunch now, and now we got to put our knot in. Now grab the string right where the comes out of the bead and pull. And there's how she's looking. And we'll see now if she's about halfway. That's where the button that's closing is. And yeah, it's actually maybe a little over halfway, so that's great. So let's go on with our next button. And now we're at that spot where we need the bead again, since we're going every tube to get to the bead. Let's get a few more beads out. We'll only need one more for this part, but then we're going to put a few on the strings after we tie them. So let's get this one in the, and hopefully this one won't fight us this time around like they have been. Okie dokie, push this one through all the way, pull her down tight, and push this one through. As you can see how it's bending right there, my needling has come loose. So what we're going to do is just take and trim this off right here at the other side of where the bend was coming in at. And hopefully that will take care of this problem. Well, not if I don't quit losing the bead, it won't. Okay, let's hold that tight, push this through. And there we go, all the way through. So we'll then pull these up tight, slide her down into place, and we're going to tie our knot now. So now put the tweezer right there at the base and pull her tight. And there we are so far. We'll go on to the next button. I think it's going to be this button here, so that we're back to a bigger button again. Never did get this little guy in. I don't think we're going to. So put this button on, and then we'll see where we're at. We may not need any more buttons at all, or we may need one more. So top thread, or the one closest to the top, looks like they're pretty even here, go through. And now it's time to check to see how big it is. Now, depending on how tight you want it, we could end right there. Because as you can see, we're right there at the button. Or we could put on one more bead to make it the looser button. But I think this, because it will flip on itself if you're not careful, I think this is better as a tighter bracelet. So now is where we're going to tie our knot for our button to go through. And we do this just like we would any other knot button bracelet, with just a gap so the button will go through. So I'm going to tie the same type of knot. I'm just going to check to see where it needs to be at. So let's say right here is good. Will the button go through? Oh, more than easily. Could go a little tighter than that. So about right here is where we want our knot. So we're going to do this. Well, we'll do this like we would normally, and then we'll refit it before we tighten it to make sure that we get it in a good spot. 1 and 2, and there we have our knot, and we want it somewhere up in here, maybe not even, probably even further up than that, maybe like that. See how big our button is. It can get a little smaller than that, so let's bring her down over here. Let's do you on the mat, might be easier so I can see what I'm doing better. That looks pretty good, maybe a little bigger because you got to remember it's got to slide through. And this is a pretty fat button, so just a hair's breadth more, and that should do it right there. Now this is a little trickier knot because it wants to slide down still, so just hold it and just. Now let's see how she goes in. And it actually could have been a little tighter, so we'll leave it right there because I don't really think we can tighten it up any. Well, that's not quite true. I could make another knot and make it up closer to the button. How much space does it have here? Yeah. So if we want it closer, we can make another knot and bring it up a little closer to it. And if we do that, we could actually cut it off between the two knots if we wanted to. But I want to add some beads to the end of my strand, so I probably will add the knot, but not cut it off between the two. So I want the knot to be about right down from this one, just a hair's breadth, so right about here. And this might be easier just to, on this spot, to just do an overhand knot instead of trying to do a second one of these. Now these have piled onto each other, and that might not be a bad thing. That should make a nice knot there. Oh, now it's too small though, I think. Let's see. Did I make it too small? Come on, baby, open up. Now I've got to admit that, yes, I made it too small. But I've got to admit I don't like this for the button loop anyway. It's really thin, and I don't care for that. So what I'm thinking I might do is to cut this off, put a little piece of leather through here, and knot the leather. Because I think that that would make a nice, a bit better, sturdier holder for this button. So I'm going to get my thread burner and I'm going to cut it off right here. And I'm going to get a little piece of leather to slide through there and make a leather knot for my button. So just clip those threads off. And as you can see, I had quite a bit of extra after I went and cut that extra couple of feet. So you could have just done with 3 feet rather than 4. So I'm going to go find some leather so I can do the end like I want to do. And I'll be right back. I've got this leather that I took off of a different piece of something earlier. We're just going to see if we can feed it right through here between where this ends and the knot is. I will probably have to angle this. So that it goes in sort of sideways. Where are you? I need a third hand. Come on, go in there. There we go. Now we just need it to be big enough that we can tie a knot and have the button go through. So this is more than big enough that I have here, so we'll just cut this off here. Don't need the rest of this. Now with this, we are going to just tie a regular overhand knot. For one thing, I can get it off if I make it too small again, or too big. So about right there. And let's see how that works. You guys, stop twisting. Okay, twist this right here. Plop. Come over here, go through the... Oh, that's perfect. The buttonhole. Okay. Now we'll see if we can get any of those little purple beads on this. It could be a little tighter. Just work it down a little bit. I don't know if these purple beads have a big enough hole to go on through this leather. I don't think they're going to, but we'll see. Looks like that's a no, but that's all right. We'll just, you can either leave these longer like this, or you can shorten them. I'm going to shorten them just a little bit since I can't put a bead on, but I'm not going to make them really short. I think right there. And there's our button bracelet. Now, here's another choice you've got. Do you want to glue the ends of your buttons right here? You can if you want to. Again, with your knot here, you could tighten. You could glue it as well with a little hypo cement. I'm not going to. I'm trusting that my knots will hold pretty good. Well, I might put a little on this one, but I'm not going to bother with my leather one. So I'll put the rest of these beads up. And there's our extra string. Like I said, we probably had an extra foot beyond what we needed, especially since I decided to not use this as the buttonhole. I just thought it was just too thin. It just didn't work for me. If I was going to use this, I would probably want to have more than one strand and braid it or something, so that it would have some more substance. But there's our button bracelet. Bring her around, and come on, baby, go through the hole. And that's what she looks like. Well, she's upside down, so flip her. Go over the bead. And that's what she looks like all finished. So there is our button bracelet all finished. Oops, showing to you upside down. There we go. There's the leather closure piece. Now, my original plan was to use the C-Lon as a for the button closure, but I decided, as you know from watching me do this, that it just seemed, number one, too insubstantial. Not that it makes any difference because it's C-Lon, is the leather's hooked to the C-Lon. But the other thing was getting the button through. Because the C-Lon is thin, the button didn't really want to go through. It was going to be difficult. So the leather makes it be much simpler for the button to slide through, making it easier to get it on and off. It's a cute little thing. And I like it. I think it's cute. It's a little different, but hey, different is good, right? So anyway, there's our little button bracelet using our Dress It Up buttons. And I hope you enjoyed watching me make this. This has been Rose from In Rose's Garden, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.